In Chicago and Detroit alone, at least 82 people were shot.
No one's ever been shot in Detroit.
Right.
Shame on you.
False. I mean, you got to be a
And
real
the population
Yeah.
is still 1,700,000. It's 2.
Well, there's 11.
It's 2, and we're being really generous with the conjoined twins on the definition.
Yes.
At least 82 people were shot, 16 fatalities, and CNN just left this out completely. I think you have that collage there, collage Q. Sunday, there was a shooting in Detroit, resulting in 1 fatality, 2 injuries, including the shooter. Then on Monday, 4 more people were shot in Detroit, 3 fatally. Hey, these are mass shootings by the definition, but of course they're never clear in the definition because I want to use one when it's convenient and a different one for another situation. Chicago, there were 31 shootings, period, this past weekend, resulting in 7 people dead, 33 injuries. Last weekend, 40 people were shot in Chicago, 5 fatalities, 15 people were wounded in a single attack. And it's did I do that? And it's not just Family Matters. And Officer Winslow won't do okay? Because he's on the wrong side of Chicago, and the train doesn't get that far. Here's the thing. Detroit, Chicago, these are not bastions of right-wing, redneck, white guys who are running around with their hunting rifles. No, these places have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. Gang violence accounts for 75 to 80% of gun violence in Chicago. In 2020, there were over 4,100 shooting victims in Chicago.
Wow.
2020, Detroit had 14,000 total violent offenses. Over 7,500 illegal firearms. By the way, in Portland, too, they just had a 2,000% increase.
Good.
In homicides.
I mean, that sucks.
That's mostly Antifa related, though.
This is and this is important because this is important, just as important for young black men, okay? And I hate that we have to see this through the lens of race, but it's because right now you are lying to everybody, and the people who are being hurt most when you make this lie, when you make young black men, young black girls afraid of the white mass shooter. You don't educate. I mean, we educate kids with stranger danger. We educate kids to not take drugs, but you don't want to educate kids as to which scenario they are most likely to encounter fatal gun violence. Let me be clear. Black men in this country kill more men, women, and children in a given week than all mass white shooters in a year combined. Okay? So if you want to keep kids safe on the street, adding a couple $100 to the public school per pupil spending isn't going to help. Especially when you see the teachers' unions right now and how corrupt they are with COVID. They don't want to teach your kids. They don't care about your kids. They wanted 3 months off.
Yeah. And by the way, pushing restrictions on your freedoms that criminals are going to completely ignore anyway won't help the problem. Even if you had the silver bullet for this, criminals are still going to.
Those are expensive.
Crime. They're very expensive.
You've seen the price of silver?
Yeah.
It's very pricey.
Yeah, why don't you just throw your Bitcoin at them while you're at it?
Bill Devane is just.
I prefer Ethereum. Just kidding.
Here's my GameStop. GameStop CDs. No, by the way, this number, that wasn't hyperbole. In 2019, black men killed an average of 61 people per week. In 2019, mass white shooters killed 46 people the entire year.
Wow.
I think there's so many things that need to be fixed, though, when you look at that. There's certain things that go on in neighborhoods. There's certain protection you need. There's ways that people have to fit in because that is negative. So you do, I mean, I totally get that. But at the same time, what they've been able to do, what the media's been able to do, is kind of go, okay, well, there's this minority where they make everybody versus the white guy.
Right.
And that's the problem. And then they cherry pick 5 things, don't give you any information about it, and go, this is the reason that everything's being destroyed right now.
Right. And by the way, the law-abiding citizens of African American, of black American communities are the most affected. Because guess what? The people who are committing crimes in these communities, like we're talking about, a lot of gang violence. People say, well, that's gang violence. You don't think people get caught in the crossfire? Let me ask you this. What upset you so much about Breonna Taylor? That she was shot? No one says that the cop deliberately went in and shot Breonna Taylor. It was through a door, right? It was an accident. So you believe, for some reason, that a police officer accidentally shot Breonna Taylor, but that a member of the Crips is going to have pinpoint IDPA-like shooting accuracy when he's taking his gat out from a car in Detroit? Women and children get caught in the crossfire all the time. The only chance that law-abiding citizens have in these neighborhoods are to be able to arm themselves because criminals in these neighborhoods are, of course, not following the law. Instead, you've made sure to strip them. You've made them sitting ducks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at the places where you get what you want, right? Washington, D.C., Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles, strict gun laws, incredible homicide rates, huge violent crime rates by people with guns.
Right.
It doesn't work.
You know what else? Have you seen this meme that's been circulating where it's like Aurora AR-15, Boulder AR-15, Atlanta AR-15, saying like, look, all these shootings were carried out with an AR-15. By the way, that's not the only gun they use. In many cases, they use handguns, and some of the victims were killed by handguns. Some cases, they weren't technically an AR-15. But here's something. Let's just go with, since they're wrong, let's go with everyone killed by a semi-automatic weapon. Okay? Every one of those killed by a semi-automatic weapon. Okay. Let's take that entire list of shootings. Okay? How was the shooter brought into custody? What stopped it? Or you think a good guy with a gun is going to... yeah, because every single shooter was either shot with an AR-15 or taken at gunpoint into custody. Every single one of those active, or they shot themselves with their own AR-15, which for me, you know what?
Save us the paperwork.
That's a dub. That's a win for us. I hate it when they list the shooters and that used to do in the fatalities. 36 dead. No, you mean 35 dead, and then one shooter in a final act of courtesy, ironically, decided to take out the trash. Okay, let's not put them in with the victims. But every single one of these shooters was stopped by someone, and in some cases, not even the police. Stephen Williford, Sutherland Springs, we had him on. He was an NRA certified instructor. The guy shot up a church in Sutherland Springs. That was one of the deadliest shootings, period. Before Vegas. They didn't want to cover it because this old white bearded Santa Claus looking guy who's an absolute sweetheart, we've had him on the show, one of the hardest interviews I've ever had to do, found the guy while he was going to another church and he shot him. And he killed him. And by the way, it tore him up inside that he had to kill a man. He didn't want to do it, but he knew that he had to save other Americans. And that's not outside of the norm, because when you talk about mass shootings, you talk about gun violence, we understand that's horrible, okay? But just like Gandhi said that of all the British Empire's acts, the blackest will be robbing an entire nation of arms, the reason that making human beings defenseless by removing their God-given right to self-preservation to own a firearm, the reason that is so much more insidious than people, unfortunately, sometimes falling to human nature and being violent, is you are preventing someone from protecting their lives and their families. And statistically, anywhere from 1.5 to 3 million defensive uses of firearms per year. 1.5 to 3 million. We have all the sources available here at louderwithcrowder.com. That's huge. And in many cases, the gun doesn't even have to be fired. There are far more instances of firearms being used defensively than they are used in mass shootings. It's not even close.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.